underground scene in the UK?
The UK scene.
An underground scene in the UK right now.
The UK music scene.
In London, there's something happening right now that happened in New York in 2014, 2016.
That's what everyone's saying right now, bro.
The UK underground rap scene is currently getting attention on a global scale. It's being labelled as a new SoundCloud era. But we need to think about why now, what has actually changed. The UK's always had a solid rap scene, but apart from a few exceptions, it's generally failed to generate noise and attention in other countries. This video will break down the techniques UK artists are using inside and outside of their music, while simultaneously breaking down the music production styles different types of artists are using to have so much success in the industry right now. I'll be breaking down 3 techniques, 3 beats, with a chapter dedicated to each style. So the first reason I think the UK underground is doing so well and why this chapter is called The Authentic Self is because I think a lot of artists have a really good way of showing their personality, not only in how they act, but also in their music. One example of this is EsDeeKid and his producer Wraith9. Wraith9 is able to carry EsDeeKid's personality and background and where he's from into the production of the actual beats. You know, a lot of EsDeeKid's lyrics point to his upbringing in Liverpool and, you know, being from maybe a rougher area. And that background for EsDeeKid is also represented in his music with the dark ambience that Wraith9 creates. Now this pattern is extremely simple, but the key is the sound selection. That's what's actually creating this dark ambience. And as you can see in this pattern, it's only 4 notes, but I'm just varying the octaves that it's playing at. And this creates this sort of trippy effect that we see in a few of EsDeeKid's songs that Wraith9 has produced.
I just left the show in Prague.
The 808 as well is going to be extremely simple, but it's going to add that grunge and that punch that mirrors again what EsDeeKid talks about in his music. Now this theme is going to be consistent again with the drums. Going to have a pattern that is very common in the UK sound right now, which is just the jerk drum bounce. I mean, I don't know what freaky person called them jerk drums, but that's what they're called, so. So that's the main pattern, and then we're just going to simply add in some percussion to add to the ear candy and background noise. And then just to top it off, we're gonna add a chant, like a breath chant, which Wraith9 uses in his songs. Yes, it's simple, but that means there's space on it. And I think Wraith9 is really good at doing less with more. That was the wrong way around. He's good at doing more with less. You know, he doesn't need to have all these complex patterns. He's able to, you know, use sound selection and think about what EsDeeKid's gonna sound like rapping on it to leave space for him. And in turn, EsDeeKid is then able to use these beats to rap about and talk about stuff that is authentic to where he's from and his experiences and his background. And that's why EsDeeKid's ultimately been able to create a global following of people now that like his music. UK's always had a lot to offer in music talent-wise, but in terms of the actual industry and money involved, it's second best to America. But I think that that's actually an advantage. Less money means there's less control over the sound. And what I mean by that is where there's bigger profits involved, there's more incentive for labels to stick to a tried and tested formula that they know will generate streams and revenue. But the UK has a blend of a thriving music culture, but less monetary control over the industry. So new sounds and styles are being created, and it's allowing, you know, the artists and producers to have more freedom with how they make music, and you know, that's what has sort of led to this really ethereal sort of pop style sound that we're seeing with artists like Fakemink and Len. But I just really personally like the production in these type of beats. You know, as I said, the ethereal sort of ambient style. So yeah, this loop is obviously very simple, but being creative and making new stuff doesn't mean you have to be, you know, making this super complicated beat. Like, it doesn't have to be some crazy lyrical song with like super deep meaning. It doesn't have to be a beat that, you know, fucking Beethoven made. Like, it can be something simple. As long as it resonates with people, then it doesn't matter. Again, we're gonna have more of the jerk drum patterns. And then adding just a two-step hi-hat pattern just tucked away in the background, just to keep the energy and movement of the beat up. Then we're just gonna add in the clap just for some bounce, and then the kick just for some more punch. And that is, as I said, simple, but just creates an interesting vibe. You know, obviously there's underground artists in the US as well, but the main point is, like, there's a gap there for these artists that are creating new things and maybe being a bit like alternative. They fit in very nicely into the UK industry. There's also still that money and attention on the UK that allows them to go global. Another reason the UK underground is so unique, there's loads of different influences and inspirations from people's different backgrounds. I've heard the UK described before as like a melting pot, and I think you can think of it the same way for music. A great example of this is Len. So he uses beats that have melodies that are still, you know, very much like underground type melodies, but then the drums are really crisp, unique, and they have a lot of Afrobeat patterns and sounds in there. It just comes together to create this sort of like underground version of like Afro beats. We're gonna take that melody now and we're gonna flip it, make it a bit more suitable for the tempo. Now we're gonna add an 808, but we're also gonna add an Afrobeat bass. And this is what I mean when I sort of say it's like a blend of two genres. Now with the percussion and drums, there's sort of too much to go into. If you want like another breakdown of like some Afrobeat stuff or Len stuff, then just let me know in the comments. But again, it's gonna be that sort of African in style bounce. And I think, again, this is a real strength of the UK artists in the underground right now, is that they can lean into where they're from and take like this underground sound, blend it with other stuff. And then in Len's case, like he's built a really good following in the UK, but I also know he's big in Nigeria as well. You know, it's just another one of these things that's helping the UK underground go to sort of a global market. You know, I think especially in the UK right now, you know, it's not in the best place in terms of, you know, feeling together and I guess united. Like there's a lot of issues in the country right now. And beats that have all these different like inspirations and come from these different cultures, but sort of still come under the umbrella of being from the UK. I think that's quite poetic in a way. Like we can all get behind these artists and collectively support the UK underground scene. And it's such an umbrella term, like underground, like there's so many different styles and artists that are there to be supported.